What is up, Need for Speed racers? It is I, your wheelman, Alex Cornnut, and I'm here with a rally build. With the game's current state and with updates on the horizon, I'm optimistic that they're going to bring us some off-road racing, some dirt tracks, and give us a reason to have all these rally parts. And so I've started building some rally cars to be ahead of the curve. If an update launched tomorrow, and it was a surprise to all of us, we would have no rally cars. And so I want to already have some out there. I want you guys to already have some built. And so that way, when the dirt races drop, if they bring them to us, hopefully they do, you guys will be ready for that. There's plenty of other road builds that I've got, but I figured I'd change it up a little bit. And with the recent passing of one of the great automotive enthusiasts in the world, Ken Block, I figured this would be a good tribute to him in the same vein as well. So we've got a Ken Block livery on the vehicle. For those of you that maybe don't know who I'm speaking of, he is responsible for what is called Gymkhana, which is a style of driving that he kind of pioneered and has shot a lot of different videos on. Please go to YouTube and check those out. They are awesome. They are truly awesome. It is like stunt driving to the max, crazy stuff, and it is very, very cool to see, and it's directed very well and put together very well. So if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, go check that out, and if you are, maybe just go refresh the Gymkhana videos because they're really good. But anyway, huge loss to the car community as a whole. Hoonigan and the rest of the groups that are affiliated with him, it's a big loss to all of us, honestly. If you're a car enthusiast, this guy was a champion for all of us in a lot of ways. But I digress. We're running the Ken Block livery. There's not a lot I can do, but you know, it's a nice memory. And so just know that I was a fan. But without further ado, let's dive into this rally build. We are running the 2006 WRX STI. I have a hatchback version of this one, which is the 2010. It's a road car. I used that car to unlock this car. So maybe if you don't have this car unlocked yet, build the other one, and then when you get to this is where we're at. I've tried it a couple of different ways in this class, and I have some gameplay footage on that towards the end of this. I explain the difference between a turbo, a centrifugal, a supercharger, and a regular supercharger. And let me just put it this way. Centrifugal supercharger is absolute crap. Not a good part. Numbers are not the only thing that makes these cars go, and I proved that with this video wholeheartedly. Like, I got a timer out. I show you guys how this thing performs. It's just, if you build cars, stay away from the centrifugal. Use a turbo, use a supercharger. Centrifugal is junk. There's like one or two cars where it's good, but the majority of the rest, it is not. So just be aware of that, you guys. But for this build on this vehicle, we are using the 4.0 V8. It is the sport motor. It is the third one over. It's 345 brake horsepower for the start. From there, we go into the parts. You are running super induction, which is gold. We are running bronze sport ECU. We are running bronze sport fuel system. We are running bronze sport exhaust. You are running elite platinum turbo. You can run the platinum or the super. I'll show you both builds, but for this one I run the turbo. You are running bronze sport nitrous. If you decide you want to run the supercharger, go equip it. See, it takes you to 215. I scale this back on the sport induction. I go to the exhaust and I scale up the exhaust to pro silver exhaust, and that'll put you right at 209. You have a little less horsepower, similar torque values, but the supercharger and the turbocharger do perform a little different. The supercharger is a little better for overall corners and everything else. It just gives you a little more power down low, getting out of corners. The turbocharger is better for higher speeds. It's going to allow you to go faster and just be able to get up to that top speed of the car a little easier. I do have footage of that towards the end of the build, so keep an eye out for that, you guys. But for myself, I was running with this with the turbo. I liked the turbo more. I like the speeds. I like to go fast, so I will switch it back. All of that being said, the chassis is the same for both, so be aware of that, you guys. It's for an off-road build. I've done limited off-road testing, but for what I've got here, we are running elite platinum off-road suspension. We are running Silver Pro brakes. We are running Silver Pro off-road tires. If you do the Gold Pros, it gives an extra point, puts it up a class. And if you do the Elites, it's 2 points. I could not discern a difference between the Elites and the Supers versus just the Pros for my off-road testing. I'm not saying it doesn't make a difference. I did limited testing in the dirt because there's no races. There's nothing to do right now, really, other than just blast around. So for myself, I really didn't notice a difference, so I figured scaling those back, give me a little extra points to play with, get a little more horsepower in the car. That was a win-win from my standpoint. We are running Sport Bronze Clutch. You are running the 5-speed Sport Bronze transmission. I tried both of these. They make no discernible difference under the circumstances of this car. This car does not do better than about 160. It doesn't matter what transmission you put in it. It says 177. That's BS. You will not get that going down the highway or anything else. Like, I couldn't get the car to hit it. 5th gear is super, super long in this car. So you go, it's snappy. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. You get into 5th, and it's just like, and it's kind of slow. It's sluggish. So when I switched to adding more gears, 5th is still the same gear ratio, and it's still super sluggish. So it's like adding the extra gears on the top end of things really didn't help anything. And you'll notice that those 2 transmissions don't change the top speed. It's because when you get into 6th, you get like just a few mile an hour on a top speed run, and that's about it. And so it says 177. Maybe downhill on a straight line that's not in this game, you could do it, but I digress. 5-speed sport transmission. We are running the Elite differential. Now, I've got a full grip build on this because I'm running the car in the grip. I'm running the car on all the races that you can run this car. There's a lot of concrete, so it needs to grip. You yourself, once we get to some dirt racing, should they release that to us, we might change this around a little bit. But for now, this is a really great starting point, and then if something changes, I'll update you guys with that. Nitrous grip, nitrous near miss, that's what I always run. For the handling portion of this, I'm all the way to the left on the grip build, 80% grip. Steering sensitivity, I'm 2 clicks to the right. Downforce, I'm 2 clicks to the right. If you go all the way right, it makes it a 208. So just because I couldn't do anything with that 1 point, there was no brakes or any other combination I could get to bring the car up, I just put the downforce there, and it seems to do okay. Traction control off, drift entry off. But if you like full downforce, you can run it over and just run a 208 build. It's not going to hurt you. That being said, that is the handling and the performance portion of this vehicle. I think it's actually really pretty good. This will stick with a lot of the A cars. It's got a lot of power, 521 horsepower, 377 torque. Overall, it's not bad. For the styling portion, now for off-road racing, for rally, I really don't know what differences there's going to be because all of our testing has been on the road. So it's like, hopefully they do bring us some dirt racing because that'll allow us to just open the door to all this new stuff we get to learn. But for now, I am running the body kit that I thought looked best. It is number 4 or 5. It's a wide body kit. It actually gives you the widest stance out of all the options. Those 2 are similar, but this one's a little wider. So I'm running the Speed Hunters kit on the front and the rear. It's got these little like dorsal fins that kind of stick up. It's pretty cool. It's 4 or 5 Speed Hunters kit. For the rear wheels, I am running the stock BBSs. I like the way these bronze rims look. I think that the car looks very appropriate with them. For the tires, these are the widest tires in the game, you guys. There is not a tire that has a wider definition to it out of like all of them. But the Toyos are second. I don't like the way these look on normal street cars, so I don't run them. But they are the Falcon Wild Peaks HT02s. It is number 13, 14, 15, and 16. So I'm running those. I ran them with the white walls on it. I am running a diffuser, but that's because this back bumper kind of requires it. Like if you run this back bumper here, this diffuser kind of complements it. The rest kind of look all weird. Like there's gaps in the bodywork and stuff. And so I decided to run this one because it goes with the bumper. It looks really cool. I really did a lot of aesthetic work on this one. Because the car slides, it's going to be really, I built it for off-road. You're probably not going to notice a difference with like a longer rear end or a longer front end because we've got such different tires and everything else that it's going to be a little slidey anyway. So I went with a wide body kit and just went with it. Now, the stance, I put it right dead set middle. You can jack this car to the moon. don't think it needs to be up that tall. If you slam it, it's still pretty high because it's got that off-road suspension, but I'm running it in the middle. Give that suspension a lot of room to work. Cool. Camber, do whatever you want. Camber doesn't matter, you guys. All of that being said, that's the body portion of it. I am running a front splitter on it. If you want one, cool. I was really going for aesthetics. I wanted to kind of do Ken Block some justice. That rear wing with the DC logo, just perfect. Now, I've got some gameplay footage of this car. I'm running some degen lines. That means that what we've coined a degen line is where you're absolutely a degenerate, and instead of staying on the track, you cut a really tight corner and just go off the track and make a beeline to that next checkpoint to really just cut down the length of track that you're driving. And so in some cases it's pretty fun. One of the tracks I do that, we just cut it right there and we go across the park, and it's a fun line. It's a good way to go. After the gameplay footage, I show you 3 separate runs. That is this car with a centrifugal, this car with a supercharger, and this car with a turbocharger. And there is very distinct differences. The super and the turbo are pretty close. Differences, but close. The centrifugal is way off in performance, and I can prove that to you. I do the best I can to give you guys very clear data, so that way there's no question. So keep an eye out for that. We're trying to put some tech into this so that way you guys can get the most out of these builds, and you can see that we're really working hard to bring you like premium content. And when I say this is this and this is this, it's usually based in some actual testing and facts. Like, I'm not just out here just spouting stuff from God knows where and you don't know what it's going to be. I digress. If you stayed this long in the video, please like, subscribe, follow, interact with the video any way you can. Comments help me out, likes help me out. Everything helps me. I'm growing this YouTube channel, and you guys are helping me grow. You guys watching are the growth. Like, it's not me doing this. I make a video. It's up to you guys to watch it. Even though I do watch it a couple times just to make sure, like, what can I do to improve? But anyway, thank you guys so much. I greatly appreciate all of you. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. For this clip, we are running a track that's got a really great degen line, as I call it. We launched this car in 3rd gear. You could launch it in 4th as well, but I prefer 3rd. But either 1, 3, or 4 will work. We're going left as soon as we go through this checkpoint. Laps 2 and 3, I had set up a little bit better line there, but overall, you're going across the park. We are making a beeline for that checkpoint. We're not staying on road. It's a little bit faster to go through there. In some classes, it's not as good, or some cars, so to speak, because they don't do quite as good on the dirt. But if you're driving an all-wheel drive vehicle, you need to be doing that line. Not in necessarily a rally car, but in your street car, do the same thing. It's very, very good. Big shout out to Sarah Well when I was trying to get this gameplay footage. He was one of 5 people I ended up trying to race with. He's the only one that made it through the playlist. Everybody else was always quitting out either after the first lap of this track or on others. And so he's a good dude. That being said, look, we cut it real sharp here. Downshift, boost across the park. Just degen lines, just barely hitting the corner of that checkpoint. I shoot for the yellow lines of the checkpoint if I'm trying to turn in early, and so that's what we do. If you run this track, you guys, it is faster to stay down low. The way the lines work and the way the whole track is just cut up, if you can stay on the downside of this track as opposed to going left early and then coming out on the top side, I believe it is actually about a second faster per lap. But overall, we're just making tight corners, using our yellow boost, being efficient with the way we shift and use our NOS, and just driving this rally car in a very rally way. So once again, degen line, cut it real sharp right there, across the park. I love that. That's so cool. It beats the heck out of going any of the other ways. And you'll see that we're taking kind of a wide line. That's because these rally suspension and tires really just don't hook on tarmac. It does very well in the dirt. It's actually really fun to drive this car because if you just drive out in, around, bombing around in the pub lobbies without racing, you can like go very fast on the tarmac, and as soon as you hit the dirt, the car doesn't slow down at all. It's really quite exciting. All right, once again, we launch in 3rd gear. This is a really good track for this car with this current setup because we get to do degen stuff. So we get to cut you'll see I'm actually going through the dirt a little more on purpose than I typically would on most of these tracks, just because I know I've got the rally suspension, I know I've got the off-road tires, and so I do kind of abuse that probably a little more than I should, but at the end of the day, I was having fun with it. And there's just no discernible difference between the tarmac and the off-road with this setup. Like, it keeps cruising. It doesn't slow down at all. A lot of fun. And like all my videos, I don't sit here and grind out multiple playlists or anything to try to get perfect footage for you guys. I just drive the car a little bit, show you what it does, and go from there. So you'll see I just hit the edge of that checkpoint. You don't have to go through it. You just got to get close to it. So I am usually shooting to actually go through the line or just aim for like the orange part of it. So you'll notice that I'm always taking as tight a corner as I can while still hitting the checkpoints. And that's going to give you a little tighter corners, a little better lines, and less distance overall that your car has to travel through the race because you're cutting it up tighter, and that's better. All right, this is a fun corner here coming up because it's very deceptive. It's easy to get hung up and go way too far to the right, but if you stay here on the left and then cut really tight, get on the concrete, then shoot a straight line through here, go a little wide, and just go straight. A lot of people kind of follow the road, and there's no real need to do that. I keep it full planted there because I know the car's going to do fine in the dirt, so we go a little wide. But really, we're just holding our speed. You'll see that fifth gear is kind of sluggish in this car. Like right here, just going through the dirt. We're making the most of it. But yeah, 115-ish is where I was typically shifting with this car, and it just takes forever to creep up. I think for the rally build, it'll be quite good when we get on the off-road sections because I think the car will hold its own. You probably won't be going the top speed like we are now. But for the road sections, the Skyline R34 that we just built, the Eclipse, a few of the other cars that we have in the A-Class will probably walk on this pretty good. But in a just pub lobby, if you guys want to go beat some people up in a rally car, you probably could. It's not bad. I'm having fun with it. And as you can see, we're 1,200 yards ahead of our opponent. So obviously, I don't know his skill level, but the car, it holds up. It does just fine. And this is one of the better tracks it does because you can just go tight, go everywhere, go off on the road. Now, I was a little salty that I clipped right there. If I hadn't clipped, that line was going to be so good. But I clipped the inside of that pillar just trying to be too tight with it. But overall, that is the Subaru Hawkeye 2006. I like this car. It's worth unlocking. I miss Ken Block. He was a good dude. So we're running that livery for him. See you guys later. Stay tuned for the Centrifugal video. Thank you so much for tuning into this. I'm going to try to give you some of the science behind some of our testing. This is one of many tests that we do. Most of the tests that we do are actually gameplay races against each other to see how the cars handle. But for this is a science portion, so I'm going to reveal some of this to you guys. What we are running in this build, this is the difference between the Root Supercharger, the Turbocharger single, and then the Centrifugal Supercharger. The Roots Elite Supercharger is what we are running in this. That is the platinum part. And we have the Pro exhaust. Those are the only two changes that we will make on this build. We have a 208 as our performance number. We are running a horsepower of 498, max torque 378. The chassis and the drivetrain will not change throughout this test. There's no reason to go into the handling. I don't touch that at all either for any of this testing. So I will start the clip. I go from this screen. I show you then the top speed of 159. Show the screen again. And then I go back to the map. And I go from this screen to the map all in one clip. I could have edited this out, but I wanted you guys to see that I'm not changing anything. I'm not doing anything different. I'm just launching and going. I start my timer. And then I tab back into the screen. I launch at 5 seconds, so that way it's the same across the board. I'm usually within about a tenth of a second error on that. It's usually 5.01, 5.02. But for the sake of the testing, it's close enough. I run the middle line here, and I really try to stay within that zone to the best of my ability throughout all of the tests. I don't hit any cars, and then you'll see up here I cut over and miss the rock just a little bit and don't hit the green sign, and then I get back into the middle. So I try to hit that line every time to stay consistent, so that way our overall data is as accurate as I can make it. It's an arcade game, you guys. It is kind of tough to be very scientific with this stuff. But just know that as a team, we really do get this technical with it because we want to bring you guys the best performance that we can. I'm going to pause the clip right up here. Okay, we're basically going through the difference between here and up there is over 1/10 of a second. So we're going to just call this a 157.3 to a 157.4. Excuse me, not 157, just 57. So this number is what we're looking at. Our speed is 151. That is our trap speed. That is how fast we are going through this zone. Remember that as well. Our overall speed for that zone was 147. So we went through at 151. Our average speed through that section was 147, and we went through at a 57.3. Now let's move on to the turbocharger. All right, we're back at this build screen. Here's the turbo. It has 521 horsepower, so it's got about 22 more than the last build, 23 more. It's got similar torque values. Quarter mile, that stuff doesn't matter. Here's the turbo. We've gone down on the exhaust, and we've gone up on the intake. So we're running gold induction and regular exhaust. So those are the two changes, but we're at a performance value of 208. We're trying to keep, this is the main part that we're changing, and then we adjust either exhaust or intake to get the last few points we need to get close. I'll start the clip here. You'll see that this top speed says 163. The previous one was less. And so by adding the turbo, it gives the car more horsepower, thus more of a top speed. Same deal, go back to the map, launch in the same spot. Once I get out into the main screen, I will then start my timer. And then I launch at 5 seconds. Like I say, we are running the automatic transmission, so that way, there's very little deviation from that. I think I started about 1/10 of a second sooner than with the supercharger, but like I say, there's got to be a little room for error, so we won't get too hung up on that. At the end of the day, we're here to really look at the difference between the turbo, the super, and the centrifugal. And I think you guys will be surprised when I get the centrifugal supercharger. Like I say, I stay in the middle. I missed the rock, missed the green sign. I was a little wider than before, but overall, for the sake of the testing, we're going to let it slide. Keeping it between the lines. We start our speed zone, and I'm going to stop it in the same place so you guys can see kind of the time difference there, and we can look at the trap speeds and everything else that comes with that. Here we go. We're coming up on the checkpoint here. Boom. All right, that's about the same spot. We're going 153. We are going 2 miles an hour faster than we were with the supercharger. So at the top end, the turbo does allow you to get a higher speed. You will see that this is a 57.7. So we're about 4/10 of a second slower getting here than we were with the supercharger. If we allow for a little deviation on maybe I took a different line, or if I started a hair later or earlier on that, we're still every bit of 3/10 of a second, I would say safely, behind where the supercharger is. So higher top speed, slower time. That's kind of the difference. That supercharger is going to have better acceleration through the earlier gears to get us here to this point sooner. But for longer races, that top speed might be valuable. So we'll go a little further. Our overall average speed through there was 148. So the speed zone section, we were actually going through that area of the track faster. But in the earlier section where I leave the garage and we go down the road, that section was done quicker because we had the supercharger equipped. So be aware of that, you guys. That's kind of the difference. The turbo is going to give you a little bit better top end, a little longer legs. These superchargers are going to help you in the earlier gears to get out of corners and do other things of that nature. Now, let's go look at the centrifugal. And for this clip, we are running the centrifugal supercharger. You'll notice that we have the centrifugal equipped here, and we also have elite induction over here. As before with the turbo, we had elite turbo, but we had to do super induction because it was too many points. So the centrifugal is worth less points, and it gives you more horsepower and more torque when you build it this way. So overall, on paper, this car is considerably better. Compared to the turbocharger, it's literally got 21 more horsepower because the turbo had 521, and it's literally got 16 more max torque because the turbocharger had 377. For the torque, the supercharger and the turbocharger, the super had 378, The turbo had 377, so they only deviate by 1 foot-pound, which is like nothing. So let's start the clip. Take a look here. Also, top speed is 167. The turbo said 163. So it's 4 mile an hour faster as well. On paper, this should be better in every single way. Start the timer. At 5 seconds, we launch. And we'll see what this centrifugal performs. It should perform better in every facet of this test because, it's got more torque. It's got more horsepower by far. It's got more top speed. Everything about it is supposed to be better. So we saw the difference between the Super and the turbocharger. The turbo got us to a little higher speed to carry through there, but it took a little bit longer to get there because the Super was good early. So let's just see what this does. I'm doing the same line, you guys. Nothing has changed there. We're not deviating from this path hardly at all. And so at the end of the day, our testing should be pretty consistent. We're running the same average speed run, so that way we can check to see how the overall trap speed is, what the average speed was. This is a very good test. It doesn't show corner exit, but for a top speed portion, it does pretty good. We'll stop the car there. 59.96. We're going to call that a solid minute. We're every bit of 2.5 seconds slower than both of the other builds. We've got more horsepower and torque, but we're 2.5 seconds slower. We're going 147. We're going about 5-6 mile an hour slower than the other builds. Let's look at our average speed. 141. That's a lot slower because our average speed with the Super was 147. Our average speed with the turbo was 148. Are you guys seeing what I'm trying to put down here? That centrifugal supercharger is not good. It is not all it's cracked up to be. I truthfully believe that it is either bugged in the game or it is just the stat values are all lies because it's got more horsepower and torque, but here's how it performs. It took us 55 seconds to get here because the first 5 seconds is a dud. We throw that away. If you can't get your turbo or supercharger to perform in 55 seconds, half the race is already done. Majority of the races are only between 2 and 3 minutes long. And so if it takes me half the race to find the performance of that part, it's not worth having. If you guys are building your cars with centrifugal superchargers, stop. Get away from the numbers. We've had plenty of people bring us builds and they're like, look at the stats. This is better than what you make. It's not. It's actually worse. It performs worse. It just doesn't appear on paper. So what you might hear us say on stream, or you might hear us say when we're talking, me and the guys, that's a paper build. It means that on paper, that car should perform very well. But when you go out and drive it, it's a turd. More often than not, we find that the centrifugal supercharger is a big portion of why the car's stats appear to be better, but when you actually drive the thing, it's sluggish and slow. So that's my testing here, you guys. I just wanted to show you the difference. The supercharger and the turbocharger are very similar. The turbo, being 20 horsepower more than the Super, is going to give you a little bit better top end, a little higher top speed overall, and you can see that when we come through the trap speed, when we do the average testing there, it has a little longer legs. But the supercharger does better for cornering and for the early acceleration. It brought us to our destination a little sooner. And the centrifugal supercharger, even though all the stats are better, horsepower, torque, and top speed, is actually the worst of the three. Thank you so much for tuning into my video, you guys. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.